better pay attention to this climate control, man. This climate manipulation. And D.C. keep talking about we're a resilient city. And that's a model based off the Rothschilds controlling the climate. To create natural disasters they can pay for to own the cities, man. Be careful.
Yes. Democrat City Councilman Trayon White of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. He was expelled from the city council by the Democrats on the city council after he was arrested by the FBI. You know, taking bribes and corruption and piles of cash, tens of thousands. Living in what did we figure out his apartment is like $8,000 a month, and beautiful luxury townhouse, or a penthouse with an amazing roof deck down by the baseball stadium. And the FBI went there and said, hey, look at all this stuff we have on you, and they arrested him. The Democrats in the D.C. City Council then expelled him from the city council. There was a special election to fill his seat, and he won it. He won his seat back because the non-tax-paying but voting citizens of Washington, D.C., they voted him back into office. Amazing stuff. This happened several weeks ago. The headlines were Ward 8 residents react after D.C. council member Trayon White's re-election. The Associated Press, despite scandal and a looming corruption trial, Trayon White wins vote to return to the D.C. City Council. Isn't that great? It's kind of wonderful, isn't it? Yes, sir. Trayon White wins vote to return to D.C. City Council despite, and that's despite is in the headline. Amazing stuff. Despite being arrested by the FBI for corruption and taking cash and living the life. But that's D.C. This is why one of the reasons President Trump is talking about, then the crime and the mayhem, the anarchy, the pandemonium. President Trump talking about taking control of D.C. and announcing last night that as of midnight last night, an additional 15 federal law enforcement agencies will be on the streets of Washington, D.C., fighting crime. And the Democrats are very angry that anybody would fight crime. Now, I bring up Trayon White because Trayon White, though he won re-election in his special needs election 3 weeks ago, today at 2 o'clock, he's going to be sworn back in as a member of the city council. And what are the Democrats going to do now? Well, they've already done their phony baloney job, so they don't have to do anything else. He's back, and that's the whole thing, right?
I'm going to say this on the record. I work for the Lord, so any issues you want to take it up with my maker.
That seems fair. That's I'm accountable, but not to you. Just take it up with God. D.C.'s Ward 8 special election results have been certified. That just happened this morning. Trayon White will be sworn in Friday. That's today. See, that's 8-8. That's Heil Hitler. And that's why Trayon White is back, I think. The D.C. Board of Elections certified the results Friday, and the Ward 8 special election officially declaring Trayon White the winner. White received the highest number of votes, with more than 8,000 ballots cast in his election. It was a special election. And the board unanimously certified his victory within minutes. White, who was removed from the D.C. City Council earlier this year amid allegations tied to a federal bribery investigation, FBI, defeated 3 challengers in the special election held this summer. Trayon White, now 41 years old, secured roughly 1,980 votes, or roughly 29% of the total votes in the So despite his electoral win, White's legal challenges continue. His federal trial is scheduled to begin January of 2026. But he can just be a corrupt government official between now and then. And the council retains the authority to expel him again, depending on the trial's outcome. They'll wait to say, hey, wait, what if I'm found not guilty? Maybe I didn't do anything. I wasn't even there. I'm innocent. Bring me a small liar. So News 7's Felicia Ashley asked Trayon White how he felt about Council Chairman Phil Mendelson still considering removing White from his seat again after his second re-election in less than a year. We want to build bridges. We don't want to fight, Trayon White said. We want to fight for the people. Boy, he's a Democrat, isn't he? You know, that's what's most important to me. Sure. White is scheduled for a swearing-in ceremony today at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. he'll be sworn in to be, this is our nation's capital. But this is what happens when you turn it over to the third world. And the Democrat Party is the third world. Make no mistake. Now, at the same time, they're kind of interesting. Michael found some fun audio today of Trayon White. Joe Biden called out the National Guard in Washington, D.C. because January 6th, ignoring 3 days of riots at the White House and 180 injured police officers at the White House riots by the Democrats, they came organized with pallets of bricks and crates of frozen water bottles to throw at the police and M80s, an eighth of a stick of dynamite. Call it a firecracker, but it'll blow your hand off, throwing those at the police. And they set fire to the Church of the Presidents across from the White House. They forced the evacuation of the president and the first family by the Secret Service from the residence in the White House to the underground nuclear shelter. And no National Guard was called out. But January 6th, after it was over, and that wasn't 3 days long, it was more like 3 hours, and then the National Guard was called out. And I looked it up again today to refresh my memory. And I think it was, January, that'd be March, 5 months we had the National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C., because a U.S. Capitol police officer shot and killed Ashley Babbitt. And that was the apex of that entire thing. Now, the Democrats, they're out of their minds. They're completely crazy. And I found the article, CNBC, from May 24th of 2021. National Guard troops leave Capitol months after deadly January 6th insurrection. Now, the only thing deadly about it is that a racist Capitol cop shot and killed Ashley Babbitt without warning for allegedly trespassing. Death sentence issued now on the spot. And the Democrats applauded that. They gave the cop awards. Lieutenant Byrd, Officer Byrd, and they gave him awards. He was a hero. He was treated like a conquering hero by the Democrats. That's the only thing that made January 6th deadly. They're amazing. There was one man who died of a heart attack. One woman apparently died of a drug overdose, allegedly, or she was beaten to death by the police, one or the other. But that's it. And then you remember Joe Biden said that 6 cops died that day because he's mentally impaired and he lies all the time. But now the headlines today all over the place are, oh, no, Trump's going to call out the National Guard in Washington, D.C. to fight crime. And he has already authorized 15 federal law enforcement agencies, ICE and ATF and FBI and lots of federal law enforcement agencies with a big presence in Washington, D.C., authorized 15 federal law enforcement agencies to take to the streets of Washington to fight crime. And the Democrats are angry about it. And it didn't start with the brutal beating by a violent mob of racists of a member of the DOJ, the Department of Government Efficiency, a young man who was brought in by Elon Musk to offer his his brains to help the United States government. And the Democrats vilified those people, didn't they? They demonized those people that volunteered their time to save the American taxpayers' money and try to streamline government and make government more efficient. And the Democrats, nearly self-immolated over that. But never mind that. So the DOJ guy, was injured and beaten. He tried to intervene in a carjacking attempt when a violent mob of Democrats were carjacking a woman. You saw, I read the story yesterday, that a carjacker in D.C. attacked a tow truck driver with a big rock in his hand. We're back to caveman days at this point. And carjacked the tow truck, threatening the guy with a huge rock in his hand to bash his skull in like that. And like, hey, it's a tow truck. Go ahead and take the tow truck. That's D.C. And Joe Scarborough said, oh, D.C.'s been hell for 20 or 25 years. Everybody knows it. And he said, but just don't do anything about it. You don't want to do anything about it. Isn't that amazing? And there's a young man was shot to death, an intern on Capitol Hill. And his mother, the mother of the murdered son, is calling for the National Guard to be called up in Washington, D.C. to fight crime and criminals. But the Democrat Party, they defend criminals because they prefer criminals. That's who they are, isn't it? Yes, it is. And I've got a Jeffrey Epstein update, too. Jeffrey Epstein story breaking today. Womp, womp, womp. But let's get back to Trayon White for a second, because Trayon White, now the Democrats are really angry. Trump authorizing federal law enforcement in the federal district to enforce the law. That seems like it, but when you say it like that, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Federal law enforcement in America's federal district might be enforcing the law. And the Democrats don't want that. Why don't they want that? That's peculiar. And it has been mentioned out of the White House, apparently, the possibility of activating the National Guard, just like Joe Biden did for 5 months after his inauguration. Washington, D.C., with military vehicles all over the streets of D.C. It's all part of becoming a banana republic because the left is here. But we found this. Michael Piercy found this morning. Trayon White, and this is from 2023, from about 2 years ago. And Joe Biden was in the White House, and there was a lot of crime. And the D.C. councilman, before being arrested by the FBI and being expelled from the city council for corruption, this is what Trayon White does. They didn't just want the Rothschilds to stop controlling the weather so they can take over. He also wanted the National Guard on the streets of D.C.
I have spoken with the D.C. National Guard. Know that police alone is not getting it done. We are clearly in a war zone. If you don't know you are in a war zone, that means you haven't been here. Till we restore order in our community and love in our community and the presence of God back in our community, we'll be here over and over and over again.
That's right, because we need the National Guard. That was Trayon White. He's a radical left-wing, anti-Semite Democrat, as I guess all of them are today. And he was calling for the National Guard a year and a half, 2 years ago, to be called up because of the crime. But now if President Trump should mention anything like that, then it's bad, because Orange Man, bad. And that's it. Now, the Associated Press, Trump orders increased federal law enforcement presence in Washington to make D.C. safe again. And the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, are very angry about this because, you know, that like they defend MS-13 gang members and the wife-beating, human trafficking, smuggling MS-13 member that Democrat senators fly down to El Salvador to have margaritas with him in prison and to feel sad for him because he hadn't been able to beat his wife in a while. And the Democrats want to get him back to what he's good at. You know, these people are amazing. So, Caroline Leavitt yesterday saying, President is looking at battling the crime in our violent, crime-plagued city, which has been taken for granted and ignored for too long. And 15 additional federal law enforcement agencies being called up to patrol the streets in Washington and fight crime where, and again, we've got, I think we have the nice lady, the mother, is that right, of the, oh, you don't have that? Okay, never mind, that's okay. No, but the murdered congressional staffer and then the Doge guy who was beaten by a violent mob of carjackers that were robbing a woman, he intervened to be a gentleman. And you notice the news media hasn't invited this guy in to pat him on the back and treat him as the hero that he is. Aren't they amazing? Just amazing. Womp, 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 womp. Were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. So anyway, Trayon White wants to call it the National Guard. Joe Biden did call it the National Guard for 5 months. If President Trump says, maybe the National Guard, too much chaos in our nation's capital, the United States of America, the greatest country in the world, and the Democrats destroy everything they touch. It's quite amazing. And I have New York City, their next mayor, Zoran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo taking shots at each other. And you'll never guess who their common enemy is, their shared enemy. That's coming up. 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. ABC News. I've got this ABC News story that I want to share with you. They're very upset that President Trump is talking about fighting crime in Washington, D.C. ABC fake news headline. Murdered congressional intern's mom says Trump should take over Washington, D.C. And I'm going to get to this in a minute, but I was laughing at the first sentence in the ABC News story. As President Trump continues to rail against crime in the nation's capital, he continues to rail against crime. When you say somebody's railing on about something, it's usually you're implying that he's being stupid, saying something stupid, and that you disagree with him. So he is railing against crime. He's supposed to be in favor of crime, like the Democrats are. Aren't they amazing? Let us grab a phone call, Michael. Let's go to Doug calling from Clifton, Virginia. Douglas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm great, Doug. What do you say?
Well, listen, in recent years, in Democratic states and Democratic cities, we've had to deal with the likes of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Occupy, and we've had to deal with millions and millions of dollars of destruction, threats, and violence against civilians and police enforcement. I'm old enough to remember, and I'm from New York. I remember the riots in Crown Heights in 1991, where for 3 days, Democrat Mayor Dinkins allowed riots that destroyed property, and 2 people were killed. 29-year-old Yanko Rosenbaum and an Italian guy by the name of Anthony Graziosi, who's mistaken for a Jew. They were murdered, and that was allowed to go on for 3 days. What do you think is going to happen if Mamdani becomes mayor, who has the ability to allocate resources wherever he wants? They're already short thousands of police officers. Do you think that some small incitement like Al Sharpton did during the Crown Heights riots, what do you think is going to happen? They have already, pro-Palestinian groups have already protested outside the Lubavitch Rebbe's house in Crown Heights. I'm looking at an image where they were saying, let's flood the streets of Crown Heights and say the Zionists are not welcome. Do you think Mamdani is going to do anything? Now, Eric Adams, like Dinkins, I think may be a nice guy. He's not anti-Jewish, but he's ineffective, he's weak, and vulnerable to political pressure.
And I'm very happy that you got back to Al Sharpton and citing those anti-Semitic riots, too. Yeah, what do you hear about Jasmine Crockett, Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and an update on Jeffrey Epstein, too, because turns out Jeffrey Epstein and the FBI were dating. They were dating. They were seeing each other. So we've got that. But right now, let's go to New York. And I got to tell you, Doug was great, wasn't he? I wish I had more time. I hit the wall, hit that mandatory thing. But Doug, great. And it's true, the Reverend Al Charlatan, a virulent anti-Semite, incited riots in Crown Heights in New York, and led to two murders. And then NBC said, hey, let's hire him as an opinion maker because he's called the Reverend, and he's going to need medical help real soon because look at him. But that's not important now. Let's go to soundbite number 5, Zoran Mamdani, because Zoran Mamdani was on the loose yesterday, and he is the Democrat, communist, jihadi, America-hating, anti-Semite, wipe Israel off the face of the map, destroy Western civilization. A modern Democrat. He's a perfectly typical Democrat in 2025 at this point. But Zohran Mamdani was on the loose yesterday in New York, and he's planning on winning the mayoral race there. How's he going to do that? Well, he's going to do it by saying, "Orange man bad," and hoping that all the Democrats will vote for him. Here's Zohran Mamdani yesterday.
My administration would be Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
Ah, yes.
And you don't need to take me at my word or take Andrew Cuomo at his. You need to only look at the actions of the Trump administration since I won the Democratic primary.
Uh-huh.
How else can you describe a president who has proposed denaturalizing the Democratic nominee of New York City? How else can you describe a president who has sought to entertain suggestions of deporting me, of arresting me, of taking control of the city over the will of New Yorkers? Those are the actions of a president who is afraid of the fact that I will actually deliver in a manner where he is simply betrayed.
He has betrayed New York City, and he's running on an anti-Donald Trump platform because he wants to be mayor of New York City, and the lefties in New York City he assumes are as crazy as he is, and he was the winner of the Democratic primary for the mayor. But isn't that amazing? Now, Zohran Mamdani, with his radical parents, two radical parents, and he's an extremist and radical, and he owns property in Uganda, just in case he's got to escape somewhere, he can go become Idi Amin or something like that. Isn't that amazing? But for denaturalization, I think it's because in the process of becoming a naturalized citizen, he lied on forms, and you have to take, tests, basically, to become a naturalized citizen. And if you lie, like, as Mr. New York professor Mahmoud Khalil, who lied on his application for a student visa about his affiliation with radical groups and terrorist groups. And then when the Democrats hear about it, they're like, so what? He lied about, supporting genocide and terrorism on his application for a student visa. Why would that be a problem? And they honestly don't think that that's a problem. I think President Trump did raise the question, and that's all, as to whether Zohran Mamdani, an extremist and a radical, whether there's any reason to look at the process that he went through to become a naturalized U.S. citizen, and whether there are any deceptions there that might make the whole thing illegal, since he's a bad guy. He's one of the bad guys. There's no doubt about that. He's 33 years old. He was allegedly born in Kampala, Uganda. He was just there to fake his wedding. Apparently skulked away with a woman, I think it's a woman, and got married, and then went to Uganda already married to stage a 3-day-long festivus, For the rest of us, it was really something. Yes, sir. And now the headlines are, Mamdani rips reported Trump moves in New York City mayor's race. What? Why he's ripping Trump? Is Trump running for something in New York? I think Trump grew up in New York. He didn't grow up in South Africa or Uganda. The truth is, this guy has been living in New York since he was 7 years old, but never mind that. So, New York Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani. Isn't his middle name Kwame? Isn't it Kwame? Kwame Mamdani. Heavily criticized reported moves, no, not clearly things that President Trump has done, but reported moves by President Trump regarding the mayoral race. And so Mamdani's out there yesterday, and he's, I'm anti-Trump, and I'm going to fight against Trump when I become mayor of New York. So wait a minute, you're the mayor of our most populous city, and you're running on a platform of being against the President of the United States, and you want to pick a fight with the President of the United States, and that's what you're running on. And Democrats who occasionally self-immolate and, firebomb various locations, they're going to say, hey, I like that. He's going to be a demented, disagreeable, hostile, power-drunk lunatic, and that's exactly who we want for mayor of New York City. And he'll bring in lots of illegal aliens who will kill and rape and loot and set things on fire, and that'll make our city more fun than ever. Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
former Governor Cuomo has been conspiring with President Trump about the fate of this city, about the future of this city, about the facts of this race.
Conspiring.
It is knowledge that is a betrayal of everything that we stand for as New Yorkers.
Well, that's true.
It
Knowledge is betrayal.
That disappoints us, and yet it does not surprise us.
Conspiring. Cuomo should sue him for accusing him of committing felony or something. And yeah, it's disappointing, but it's not a surprise. Conspiring with Trump. So this is his accusation for Andrew Cuomo, the former governor who let all those people die in the Wuhan death houses that he set up and groped every woman that walked by him. But when you're a Democrat, that's fine because he could still win the next political office. Isn't it amazing to be a Democrat? And what's he running on again? Trump bad.
New Yorkers do not want a mayor who is working in tandem with the president to subvert the will of the people of this city.
Working in tandem. They don't want a mayor who's working in tandem with the president of the United States to subvert the will of the city. The will of the city is to wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea. And what else is the will of the people? To a global thermonuclear war, destroy Western civilization, kill all the Jews, and do away with capitalism because he's anti-capitalist as well. Isn't he amazing? Yes, sir. And Andrew Cuomo, he was the governor. Gropey McGropeface is his code name. And Andrew Cuomo came out and he's campaigning against Mom Donnie because Mom Donnie won the Democratic nomination to be their nominee, their candidate for mayor of New York.
Sanctuary law, I will defend it with every ounce of strength. By the way, the state has a sanctuary state law, which I did by executive order. So state sanctuary city policy, state sanctuary law, New York City sanctuary city policy, I would enforce them 100%.
Enforce not the law. He wouldn't enforce the law 100%. He would enforce sanctuary city laws and statewide, when he was governor, sanctuary state laws. Now let's tick off the number of New Yorkers murdered and robbed and raped by illegal aliens and gang members from other countries, and they came in illegally. That's all good. What the Democrats are fighting for. The United States of America, we are on the rocks. We are so, not like a nice cocktail, but like a ship that's gone ashore on the rocks. Truly amazing stuff. Yes, sir. They are not on our side. Yeah, so what is that now, the Mamdani family? That's right. What do they? They own a sugar plantation in Uganda? Is that what they own? Because they got, we were talking about the wedding there, a compound, a walled compound with at least 3 gates that the news media could spot, surrounded by armed militia members in camouflage with Russian-made combat assault rifles protecting the plantation, if you will, of his father in Uganda. And Mamdani was there for several days and then was kind of being shamed into coming back to New York City. Yeah, but another super wealthy Uganda family where they're exploiting, where everybody's saddling up with the communist Chinese there too, which works for all of them. Isn't that great? Just amazing stuff. Now, I mentioned earlier also, speaking of New York, I think it was in New York, there was a prison where Jeffrey Epstein didn't hang himself. Am I right about that? Is that was happening there? And this is pretty amazing. The leaked FBI document shows Epstein, talking about Jeffrey Epstein now, was an FBI informant. I'm sorry, what? Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI informant, and then was he informing on the Clintons? Because that might explain how he ended up at the end of a rope or a sheet or whatever it was. The Democrat Party they're not democratic. They're not on our side anymore. And again, I grew up in a Democrat household, but my mother would find it unrecognizable, as Robert F. Kennedy said, that his father and his uncle would find the Democratic Party to be unrecognizable today. Just amazing what they have become. Again, sending a severed pig's head to a real estate man in Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got all kinds of pandemonium going on here across the country. Amazing stuff. But that's okay. And now it turns out that the reporting, and there is wide reporting on this now, that the FBI, there's a new document, and I lost it here in my computer because it cashed in on me here. The Epstein was an FBI informant. And what does that have to do with anything? Well, why would we just be learning that now, years later? Epstein's association with the FBI as an informant been the subject of speculation in a recent documentary. But it turns out now the Economic Times, Jeffrey Epstein was not only a sex offender, but wait, it gets worse, also an FBI informant. Wait a minute, what's worse is the leaked files suggest. There are now leaked files. Jeffrey Epstein, not only a sex offender, but also an FBI informant, a spy for the FBI. Is that going to be a problem? Well, it's not really going to be a problem for him at this point, but newly uncovered FBI documents have revealed that Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender who died in jail in 2019, and it's 6 years later, and we're still getting the slow roll on all of this, aren't we? Yes, we are. Died in jail in 2019, was more than just a protected figure. He was a secret informant and intelligence asset of the FBI. This bombshell information obtained exclusively by Radar Online. Not the New York Times or the Washington Post or 60 Minutes or ABC News, but Radar Online. Through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. Well, why didn't 60 Minutes file a lawsuit through the Freedom of Information Act to get these documents? No, Radar Online did, not the Washington Post. Sheds new light on Epstein's controversial 2007 plea deal and longstanding suspicions about his immunity from federal prosecution. According to an internal FBI cable dated September 9 of 2008, special agents noted that Epstein was actively providing information to the FBI, quote, as agreed upon, end quote, and that no federal prosecution would proceed as long as he complied with the agreement made with the state of Florida. Okay. This cable marked routine, not classified or highly classified or anything like that. Marked routine because it's the FBI. Got a lot of shady stuff going on behind the curtain. Strongly suggests Epstein was cooperating with federal authorities before his notorious plea deal that saw him plead guilty to reduced state charges and serve only 13 months in a largely work-release jail arrangement. The document also indicated that the FBI did not require further forfeiture assistance related to the case at that time. Isn't that wonderful? Sure, reflecting a working relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and the agency, the FBI, predating public knowledge. So long before that, and why is it that we never learned about this? We never heard anything about this. That's kind of peculiar, don't you think? I think that's odd. But Radar Online, and again, of all the news organizations on the planet Earth to get a hold of this, does anybody do anything in journalism anymore other than just squawk whatever the Democrat Party wants you to squawk about? Hey, I want to talk to you about living a better digital life. Who doesn't want that? With one of our newest partners. We love our new partner, WebRoot. I chose WebRoot because of the Total Protection Plan. WebRoot's all-in-one package offers an option for individuals, allowing covers up to 5 devices, or with a family package, up to 10 devices. They have you covered no matter what, no matter which way you go. WebRoot's coverage includes antivirus protection, identity protection, VPN backup, and a whole lot more. And listen, you got kids on the internet? Of course you do, with phones and iPads and things. You've got adults in college and in high school. You've got seniors. You've got everybody. And WebRoot covers everybody. WebRoot allows my best girl and I to live a better digital life, and that's why I want to recommend WebRoot to you. You ought to do the same. Get 50% off right now. WebRoot's Total Protection or WebRoot's Essentials when you go to webroot.com/plant. That's me. Again, get 50% off WebRoot Total Protection or WebRoot Essentials when you go to webroot.com/plant. Yes, sir. Yeah, so Jeffrey Epstein and the FBI. So, the FBI is not doing very well these days, are they? Seems like they've got a lot of Democrats there. Is that what it sounds like to you?
I am an FBI agent.
I know, man. Isn't it wild?
Let's go back to the telephones. Let's see. Let's go to Rachel calling from Clark County, Virginia. Rachel, you're on the Chris Plant Show. Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Rachel, no home. Let's go to Mike calling from South Riding, Virginia. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. Good morning.
Mike.
Talking about the Democrats and supporting crime, I'm 68, and I remember even in the mid-'60s when I was about 6 or 7 and I started watching the news and reading the newspapers and stuff, the Democrats have supported crime since at least the mid-'60s. Whenever crimes were committed, especially in D.C., Democrats would come out, you can't blame the kid who held up the liquor store because, mommy didn't give him breakfast that morning and he was angry. And then a little later into the mid-'70s or so, it became you have to blame society. It's not their fault that they committed the crime. They had no choice. And it's been going on ever since. So, seeing the Democrats, they still support crime. And, I tell people, I say, why are you surprised? Go back and do some research. Go back and look at the 60s and how the Democrats supported crime. They haven't changed.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I don't know, Lee Harvey Oswald and James Earl Ray come to mind, and James Hodgkinson, and James Crooks, who shot Trump. Yeah, the Democrat Party is a violent political party.